Then another source of potential air noise is San Francisco air traffic. San Francisco is really important to what's going on here because of the complexity of the airspace. And San Francisco owns so much of the airspace down close to the Sunnyvale Mountain View border. It becomes very important when I talk about the south flow process. What happens is the south flow traffic has to fly underneath where San Francisco owns the airspace, so they're very important in this process. And then there's just general aviation traffic that flies over. These are the small propeller-driven planes that can fly pretty much in any direction that goes back and forth over the city of Sunnyvale. So those are the different sources that we have. I'm going through and talking about the Bayview approach. This was implemented by the FAA as a pilot program. It ended about a year and a half ago. And what this was an intent for aircraft that's flying into San Carlos Airport. They wanted to get that air traffic out over the bay so that as they flew farther up the bay over Palo Alto, San Carlos, and they landed they were landing from over the ocean and not over the houses that are up there. One of the real problems that happened with the Bayview approach procedure is that in that procedure, the FAA defined a spot in Sunnyvale that those planes had to fly over. So they dictated that those planes had to fly over Sunnyvale to get out over the bay so that they could do this Bayview approach. That pilot program has been stopped, although the airline that's doing that still flies it. But there's been a significant change that has occurred with the Bayview approach process. If you look and you notice there's this dotted line here, and right about where the S is in Sunnyvale was where that dot is in Sunnyvale that those planes were required to fly over. The FAA has removed the requirement, and I'll repeat that. The FAA has removed the requirement to the procedure that those planes have to fly over that point in Sunnyvale. So now what they have is they have a procedure that actually starts approximately out where the solid line is, which is flying, so they'll be flying over the bay in San Carlos Airport, but they're not required to fly over Sunnyvale anymore. So that is a win for Sunnyvale. You guys can have clap for that. I'll go ahead and say that I think that was impacted a lot by community activism and residents here in Sunnyvale and other cities. So that's a very good thing as well. I've not been able to get a clear answer from the FAA whether or not they fully approved that procedure or not. But if it is ultimately approved, it will not have that dot over Sunnyvale. So planes can fly lots of different paths to go ahead and get over that area. There are other things going on that Surveyor is having financial difficulties, and it may even be possible to go ahead. It may even be possible to go ahead and see if we can get the procedure in all its phases not approved. But that's the win that's happened so far with there. Okay. Next, talking about self-flow. So the red line that we have here that's the normal approach of planes landing at San Jose Airport. When wind conditions change, this happens, I have a slide that will show it happens roughly somewhere between 15 to 20% of the time. That's historically consistent over the years. But planes end up flying this blue arrow where they fly over Cupertino, Sunnyvale, Mountain View, make a turn, and we have a radar track picture that will show a little bit more detail of what this is. This is just the concept of what it is. And they go around and they fly into and land at the airport. And you'll see there's that other line there that shows traffic into SFO. That's a representation of the SFO airspace that's controlled, and that this south flow traffic has to stay below what is the San Francisco traffic. So that's just the situations of what's going on there. A big change, this general path has existed for decades, but with the next gen and technology changes, where the direction and the control of the aircraft used to be by radar control, so that with the radar vectoring, there's a wider path. And again, I have a slide later that will show this. With the next gen changes, they now fly GPS. We all know how well GPS tracks. And so you see that they essentially fly over the same houses every time. So it really is a rail where they're flying. So the same houses are being bombarded by this all the time. Another change that's happened as we look at this, and I think this is weather related, climate change related, but if you look back years ago, most of the time when south flow was initiated, it used to be in the afternoons. And now we're seeing south flow happen first thing in the morning, so 7 o'clock in the morning when people are still in bed. Another change is the number of operations that happen at San Jose are increasing year over year over year. I'll show that in another slide. The planes that are flying into San Jose today are much larger than the planes that used to fly into San Jose 10 or 15 years ago. So it's all these factors in conjunction with the GPS change, I think, that's really highlighting or aggravating and making this problem of the air traffic into San Jose much worse. So this is a chart that shows, on the one side it's showing total number of operations that are going in. So you can see looking back, the first bar there is 2008. You see there's been a dip in operations, and the number of operations is increasing. The blue part of the bar are when they're flying the north flow traffic. The orange piece is representing the percentage of traffic that's flying south flow. So it just gives you a sense of the traffic that's going on, the percentages of time that they fly it, and what's happening with the number of operations that occur. Interesting thing to note, the last bar on the right, it's the half bar right there, that is a half-year number, so if it looks like if you just double that number for what's going on, they're more than increasing last year, the number of operations that fly into San Jose. So what are we doing about the South Flow problem and challenge here? Many of you know, I've seen some of you at some of the meetings, there's an ad hoc committee on the South Flow arrival. This was a committee that was limited in time. It was for 6 months. There were 14 representatives from 13 different jurisdictions in the county. They got together and met over 6 months to work with the FAA, listen to our community members, and make a series of recommendations to the FAA for them to respond and possibly make changes. So that has occurred. Lisa was on the committee with me. I was the chairperson of that committee. I'm just going to talk about a couple of the changes that were, the recommendations that are made. Again, I'm not speaking as the chairperson of the ad hoc committee. I'm just going to talk about things that are more relevant as recommendations to the city of Sunnyvale. This slide right here is going to go ahead and talks about the different groupings of recommendations that were done: flying more dispersed routes, explore other approaches, modify procedures, implement FAA changes, explore a single regional noise reporting system. So these recommendations have all gone to the FAA. I think we have a copy of the report in the back. This presentation that we're using is going to be on the city's website. It might already be there today. Is that correct? It'll be on tomorrow. So if you haven't seen the report, you can see it. In the report are the recommendations itself. We also included in the appendix all of the material that residents had sent us with what their ideas were. There are residents that had videotaped those meetings. We included the links to those meetings. So we tried to capture as much of the information that was collected along the way and make it transparent and be available, so this can be a future resource document for other organizations that are going to be looking at air noises. I will say the ad hoc committee has disbanded. It had a very set time, 6-month duration of what went on. We were able to get our report out. We're waiting for responses back from the FAA. We're waiting for a response back from the FAA of when they're going to respond. As the chairperson of the committee, I still continue to follow up and try to get that information from them. And we're going to talk about something else on where the responses are going to be able to go to. There's a new committee that I will tell you about where I think it's going to be able to be the receptor of the responses that ultimately come back from the FAA. So here, this is the diagram. It'll show you this radar track. Sorry, it's not a little bit larger, but if you see in the middle piece right there, 2011, this is where these are radar tracks of actual flights. They go over, and you see there's a much more dispersed route of traffic over the city of Sunnyvale. It's not flying over that direct rail, same house over and over and over again of what goes on. You look at the slide to my right, your left, I'm not sure which way, but 2016, and you can see that very hard line rail number of where they're being, same houses are being impacted. So the recommendation of the FAA is to go and let's have that air traffic dispersed in some manner. They're not going to go back to radar vector. That's just not going to happen. But there were techniques that were discussed with the FAA about how they could have and give us a more dispersed route of that traffic over the city of Sunnyvale. So that is a specific recommendation. And talking with people in the FAA, that is something that is potentially achievable, that can be done for what goes on. I want to use this slide and touch about one other thing just real quickly. And these are for people that are on the blogospheres and talk about things. Everyone in Sunnyvale experiences aircraft noise differently. Each aircraft is only flying over certain parts, so aircraft 1 might impact somebody, aircraft 2 might impact somebody else. Either of those aircrafts might not impact anybody. When I see on the blogs and stuff and different things, people are trying to talk about and share their concerns about aircraft noise, and then there are these people that fly in, yeah, that's my pun, and talk about, well, here, aircraft noise is not a problem. We shouldn't hassle with it. Why are you concerned about it? It used to be much worse when the P3s flew here and things like that. I have a request, and I can't, keep posting your information about, what your concerns are and stuff, but don't necessarily engage the people who just want to have an argument with you about whether or not aircraft noise is a problem. They're just, that's all I'll say about it. There's not a win to that part of the argument. Don't stop posting and don't stop your discussion about what your concerns are, but don't necessarily engage in that kind of, because it's not going to go anywhere and you're not going to win. So that's what the South Pole approach is. Let's go back to more dispersion for what goes on. And that was an official recommendation, not only in the document, but the committee, ad hoc committee voted and said, this is something we really want. I believe it was our #1 thing that we asked to do. And how dispersion looks a little bit different in Mountain View. So maybe afterwards you can tell everybody else about that. The next piece is, here again, this is another aircraft track. For those of you who have not been that involved in this, Zorsa is a waypoint in the aircraft manuals for what goes on. We'd like more altitude. Let's try and raise the planes higher. Now we have a fundamental problem. These planes are going in for their landing approach. So they're actually trying to get closer to the ground. But Sunnyvale is still flight time pretty far away from San Jose. Again, the biggest challenge being able to raise the altitude is how far south San Francisco controls the airspace, and we have to stay underneath them. So maybe they need to raise their airspace a little bit, and then we can do it. But again, this is another specific recommendation that was in the report to the FAA, and we want a specific response back. The next piece here is explore other approaches. So you see in this yellow circle here, it might be a little bit hard to see, but there are some pink lines in there that are representing aircraft traffic that's flying into San Jose. And so you see they're kind of hooking in and making that U-turn from the other side. We wanted to have a recommendation that said, let's study, not commit to do anything. Let's study to go ahead and explore and look at that more. The committee was not able to get that to be a recommendation. Okay, that was a challenge with, we had to get X number of votes of the cities that were on the committee to go ahead and do that. However, it's not an official report, but all the documentation about it, all the reasons why it's a positive things to do, all the residents' comments about here, we should go ahead and do that. All of that information is still included in the report. Okay? But it's actually disappointing we weren't able to get this to be an actual recommendation of what we wanted to study. I repeat, we wanted to study. So kind of where do we go from here of what's going on? So first off, the city of Sunnyvale has an RFP out, and we'll be looking to install airport-grade noise monitors in the city of Sunnyvale. So, now, I'll say that's we have an RFP out to do that. We still have to vote to go ahead and do that. You'll see there's more than 3 of us here. This is a publicly noticed meeting, so it's okay for us to be talking about this. I think, I don't believe it's going to be a problem to go ahead and get the vote to go ahead and allocate the funds to do this. What does that do for us? A, we'll get true, accurate readings of what is the noise that's going over the city of Sunnyvale. We will take that data, we're going to make it available to all public residents if they want to go ahead and do your data mining and whatever else you want to go ahead and do with the data. One other thing is, the FAA says that they use computer modeling, simulated modeling for their sound. I think we've all seen what simulations are and things like that, and that's an okay thing. Ask them the question, have they ever validated their simulations with real, actual data? The answer is no. So one of the things we'd want to do is go ahead and give that data directly to the FAA and say, hey, please go back to your simulation models and validate your data. Maybe you'll see that they're correct. Maybe you'll go ahead and make some modifications to that. So I think there's some real positives out of that. And this will not be short-term monitoring. This would be, we will go ahead and install these. It's FAA approved stuff, so they can go ahead and agree with that. And then we will go ahead and have ongoing annual allocations. We will leave these monitors in place. This is not just a short-term thing to go ahead and do. Next thing here is continuing to follow up with the FAA on trying to get the responses to the requests and the report that we have done. I continue to follow up and try to get them. My request right now is turning into, can you please give me a date for the date when you will give me a date, you know that? But we've not forgotten. I think it is, I would be doing this as the mayor, but also as the chairperson of the committee. Some of my responsibilities didn't stop with that. The Cities Association, how many people here know that we have a Cities Association in Santa Clara County? Not very many. There is. The Cities Association of Santa Clara County, which encompasses all the cities here, is they have decided to form a roundtable on air noise. It'll be the Santa Clara County and included Santa Cruz County. So they have said we're going to go ahead and move forward with that. The city of Sunnyvale is going to join. There are a list of 7 other cities that have already decided to join. So it's Sunnyvale, Cupertino, Santa Clara, Saratoga, Los Altos Hills, Monte Sereno, Palo Alto, and Campbell have already voted to join. Now there's, as you can imagine, the Cities Association, there's always a little bit of controversy with something. Some of us have some concerns with the bylaws. And with that, some people said, don't join. Get them to fix the bylaws first. I don't believe that that's a way, and I don't believe our city council believes that's the way, because we voted unanimously to go ahead and join. If you want to fix the bylaws of something, you join the organization, you get to speak to people there, you make motions, you have seconds, you advocate, and you get something done. The approach that some people have said, which is what San Jose is taking, is said, we don't like the bylaws, we're not going to join. When you guys change the bylaws and fix it the way I like it, then I'll come join. I just didn't think that's a good way and a good approach for us to go. I'll just also go ahead and say San Jose, in their comments of why they didn't want to join, they wanted proportional voting. So right now it's set up as that each city gets 1 vote. Everybody knows there are 153,000 people in the city of Sunnyvale. There's over 1 million people in San Jose. They wanted multiple votes to be able to control what goes on. I didn't think that was a good way to go. And I think my colleagues agreed with that. So we're joining the roundtable. And I'll also say, my comments that I spoke at the city council meeting was, the way I looked at it, if there is going to be an aircraft noise roundtable for Santa Clara County, should the city of Sunnyvale be a participant? And the clear answer to that question is yes. And then we're just going to continue to work with our regional partners. What goes on, thanks. The regional partners are the airports, other cities, our federal officials for what goes on. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do. So that is a very quick recap of things that have gone on with air noise. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pass it over to the Congressman and see if he wants to add a few words.
Well, thank you, Mayor Hendricks, for putting this together. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you to Gustav, Russ, and Larry for your leadership. Every time you come and visit in D.C., this is the first concern that you have raised. And, I appreciate everyone's advocacy. Every week I ask my staff to summarize what people are writing about. And you can imagine in this environment, the biggest issues are, why are we separating people at the border from their kids? The second one is, what are you doing to hold Trump accountable? And airport noise is always in the top 5 of the issues in this district. So we certainly are registering your voice, and it's something that a lot of people care about. It's not just a few folks. Here's what we've tried to do with Chris Moylan, who has taken the lead on this from our office. We had the FAA regional administrator here last March to speak with some of the concerned citizens and the mayor and city council members to register our view that there has to be a change in the flight patterns and some change to reduce the noise, that the status quo is unacceptable. Candidly, I have been disappointed with the responsiveness of the FAA. They were sympathetic in the beginning, they listened, they promised that they were going to have an open town hall and come back. They haven't lived up to that promise. I'm going to be working with some of the other members of Congress to continue to put pressure on them to come back and have a conversation, not just with the elected officials, but with the citizens. But we did have the regional administrator come in. We got a response from them to some of the recommendations that was not adequate, and we need to continue to put pressure on them. The second aspect, I joined the Quiet Skies Caucus, and we tried to offer amendments into the authorization of the FAA that would consider the airport noise as one of the considerations that the FAA should take into account, and to consider health as opposed to just efficiency when making these decisions. Those amendments were both defeated in the Congress, and unfortunately, largely on partisan lines. We are going to reintroduce those amendments next year. If we can get those amendments into the FAA authorization, it will make a huge difference, because then the FAA would be obligated to consider things other than efficiency, and to really consider noise as one of the criteria which they are not legally currently having to do based on the law. So we will continue to try to push for those amendments. The third, as the mayor spoke, your city council has been very collaborative. You voted to join this permanent roundtable. One of our challenges has been that we haven't been speaking with a regional voice. As a congressman who represents not just Sunnyvale, but the other cities, I will be speaking to my friend, the mayor of San Jose, to try to persuade them that they need to join this permanent roundtable as well, and that we all are in this together. I get that they want to just have maximum capacity at the airport, but you can't just have maximum capacity until you address the quality of life and the noise in the region. And we need to have a coordinated approach that takes everyone's consideration. In my sense is people will be reasonable. I mean, no, people aren't going to say don't maximize your airport, but on the other hand, you have to be a good neighbor and a good responsible city that considers the impact on everyone. So I'm hoping we will make progress on getting San Jose and getting other cities to join what Sunnyvale already has done. Once we have a permanent roundtable, I think it makes it harder for the FAA to ignore us and play one city against the other city, saying, well, you want this, but another city wants this. Often, frankly, that's not even the case, but they use that as an excuse for inaction. So this is an issue that I will continue to work with the citizens here and the elected leaders, and the concrete next steps, in my view. I do want to commend the city for the permanent air noise detection. I think that's a big step. I had heard that there was a citizen who was doing this. It's amazing to me. I realized how many PhD scientists live here when they started going through the airport noise situation. And I said, you know, Chris, do you understand this? Because you're more of a scientist. But there was a citizen who was doing this, and now it's great that the city will be doing this officially. I think that's a very constructive step. I'm committed to doing whatever it takes to get an FAA representative back down here in the next year. It's probably not going to happen until the end of the year. And then to pursuing these amendments again and trying to get the permanent roundtable.
Thank you for your comments, and I will just go ahead and say, Sunnyvale has the highest per capita patents, number of people with patents, than any city in California. US, correct, in the US. I get that wrong. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. When we have the data from these things, and that's why we're getting, what monitoring the FAA already agrees with, because when it's somebody else doing it, they don't agree, take that as the technology is correct. So those are our comments. This is where we try to be very quick. I'm almost on the schedule I wanted to be able to get to public comments. How we're going to do this is we'd like people to fill out speaker cards so we can keep track and turn them in. And the question I've been asked for the last 2 weeks is, how long are people going to get to speak? And this is the question right here. Would people raise their hands of who wants to speak? Okay. See, the challenge is, if those are the only people who are going to speak, I can give a certain amount. But then when other people say, we're going to go ahead and want to speak as well, then it becomes challenging. We're going to run into a time constraint problem. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go with 2 minutes for people to speak. Because I'm not calling off people's names, what I'm going to suggest is if I can get the first 5 or 6 people to stand up in line here, there's going to be somebody down here who will take your speaker card for what goes on. We're going to have a timer that shows you how much time you have to go ahead and speak. And once it gets down to just 2 or 3 people left, the next 4 or 5 people that want to go ahead and speak, go ahead and stand up and get in line. Now, there's been a question about this is public comments. It's not going to be a back and forth dialogue. We have people from staff here that are going to go ahead. We're taking the questions. I believe we're recording this. And we may end up doing as a way of maybe we'll do an FAQ or a question response later on so we can keep track of the questions and maybe be able to get responses back out to the public of what goes on. So with that, if I could have the first 5 or 6 people that want to speak and go ahead and get in line right here. The speaker cards are in the back. I'm sure there's somebody from our city staff who will raise their hand and say where the speaker cards are, right in the middle right there. And again, if you put your contact information on, if there's anything specific we need to get back to you, that just allows us to be able to go ahead and do that. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go through our speakers. So thank you very much. You're up. And go ahead and can you speak? Everyone's telling me you got to speak right into the microphone, so everybody do that. Just if you get really close and speak into the microphone. Thank you.
I'm a 30-year resident of Sunnyvale, and I've been tracking the noise from the air flights. And I've used the standard of what would interfere with conversation. And during the peak periods, we have flights over every 7 minutes over my house. Okay. And all those interfere with the conversation. What I propose is that you talk to the FAA and have them provide 3 or 4 tracks that the planes can fly down, so you can minimize their fuel expenditure and also minimize the noise. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Josh Grossman, and I'm running for Sunnyvale City Council seat 2. First, I want to say how much I appreciate the Save My Sunny Skies work. The work they're doing is really outstanding, so kudos to you. I want to propose a 5-point plan that I think we can use to move forward. Number 1, we need the demand changes to the city's roundtable. As you mentioned, this is a problem. I don't think we should have joined without those changes in place. Second, we need to hire a consultant to help us lobby. That's critical. Thirdly, you've mentioned the number of folks that we have that are doing so much good work. And I have to say, many of them, there's folks in Sunny Skies who have forgotten more than I know about airplane noise. We need to create a citizens advisory board, and we need to do it as soon as we possibly can. We should leverage these folks' expertise. And also, I believe when we fight, we win on issues like that. And this is something that history shows us. If you look at what's happened in John Wayne Airport in Orange County, there's an article, they were able to get the FAA to change their flight path.